Welcome everyone to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program webinar. My name is Rebecca, and today we are going to cover a topic called ownership. And in this topic we are going to focus on one area of ownership today, and that area is rules are okay. Alright, now in this class we are going to cover 4 things while we go through this lesson. And here's an overview of what we'll be covering. We'll be covering what is a rule, that's number 1. Second thing is we're going to be looking at authority figures, people who make the rules or people who supervise the keeping of rules. We are also going to look at 4 reasons why rules are set and 3 overall purposes that rules are given. And the last thing we are going to do is a little activity which will help us to appreciate why rules are given and the keeping of rules overall. Alright, so now to begin, seeing that we are on ownership, the first thing we are going to be talking about today is that we all own things, yes? How many of us own things? Yes, we know everybody's hand would be up for owning things. And in the Peaceful Solution, we have learned that owning things means that it belongs to us, and we have the privilege or the right to set certain rules regarding the things that we own, because they are our things and we want to make sure that we care for these things because we value our possessions. And just as we would like to, have other people keep the rules concerning our things, we must also respect others regarding the things that they own and keep the rules concerning theirs. Does everybody agree? Yes, you think so? Yes. Okay, so the first thing we are going to be looking at is the definition of the word rule. Okay, and we have 2 definitions here which make up the word rule. We see the first one is an instruction that tells us what can or cannot be done. And the second one is a guideline that tells us what we can and cannot do. They're very closely related, as you can see. Alright, now regarding rules, seeing that we have certain rules that we know we have concerning possessions. Now, in the Peaceful Solution, we have learned that if we have to make rules regarding our things, we may say, we can decide who borrows our things, we can decide how long the person keeps our possession, and we can decide when they have to return it. It may be a certain day, or it may be a specific time of day that they have to return that possession. Now, regarding rules, we have that right, as we said, concerning making that rule. Now, sometimes we have to keep rules because there are certain authority figures may have rules set down for us. And do we know about any authority figures that we can think of? Yes, that may set rules for us or supervise the keeping of rules. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at some authority figures. But before we do, let us look at the definition of authority. And we see an authority is someone who is responsible for or in charge of another, and they can also be in charge of something. As we know, we have certain authorities concerning our possessions. Now let's have some examples about authority figures. Can you think of one example of an authority figure, like who may be an authority figure? I have some here and I'm going to stick them up on the board, but let me hear some of your answers. We have an answer at the back.
Governmental bodies, like for driving laws.
Governmental bodies, like for driving laws.
Parents.
We have parents, yes, that's right.
Teachers.
We have teachers and?
Your boss at work.
Your boss at work. Supervisor. Anybody else? Anybody can think of anything else? Managers. Okay, all of these are correct answers. So let's have a hand for everybody. Yes. Alright, and now you're going to see some of these that you mentioned. Okay, so we have supervisor. Let's put this here. We also have guardian. Let's see. This one is parent. Yes, we have a coach. And 2 more. Somebody mentioned teacher, right? Teacher. And we have 1 more here, and that would be counselor. Yes, that's right. Okay, so we have an idea of people who are in authority, people who we may have to... Now, some of us are in those positions, yes? Yes, we have parents in here? Do we have any supervisors? Yes, we heard somebody had said managers. Do we have any managers over certain things that you may have to manage certain things? Yes, we do. Okay. And teachers. What about teachers? Yes, we do have teachers. Okay, now, what we're going to look at is 4 reasons why rules are set. 4 reasons why rules are set. So I'm going to put up the next flashcard. Okay. And we see that rules are set for, now this is the item, okay, it may be an item that we are looking at, something that we own, and we set rules for 4 reasons. We may set rules for safety, that's 1. We may set rules for the proper use of that item. We may set rules for appropriate time to use that item. And we may set rules to show consideration concerning using that item. Because remember, we also want to be respectful of the item and respectful of others while we use things. Okay, so we're looking at those 4 things concerning rules. Now, one of the things that I'm going to mention here is taken from the Peaceful Solution book on self-control. This is the junior high level, or what we call the intermediate level. And I'm going to read a little excerpt concerning keeping of rules. I have the excerpt here, and I'll read it for you because before we go into explaining about the different purposes of those rules, we want to keep in mind these two things here, rule and authority. Alright, we want to keep these 2 things in mind. So we see here from page 17 of the self-control unit, it tells us that we have to always use, positive options regarding things. Alright, decisions that we make, we must always make a positive choice. That option is really a choice. And it tells us that if we respect authority, as we see there, respecting authority, it means that we are using self-control. It also tells us that obeying rules means that we are showing self-control. Because if you have set a rule concerning something and I keep that rule that you have set concerning your possession, if I borrow your possession, it shows that I have self-control. I'm using self-control regarding your item. I'm going to make sure that I do not mistreat it, because are you going to make a rule that would tell me I should mistreat your item? No, we always want to care about the things that we own, which we have learned in the Peaceful Solution concerning ownership, about caring for and valuing the things that we have. It also tells us, it says in this same book, it tells us that it regards the position, when we respect authority, it regards the position of one who is in charge of and responsible for that item or that person. Alright, so even people in authority concerning, let's say, supervisors and teachers, it shows respect. Okay, so we want to remember that. And sometimes we have to keep rules regarding certain items, and we have to get permission from people in authority to use certain items. Have anybody been in that situation before? Yes, we have people who have been in that before. Yes, we sometimes have to get permission. All right, so let's move on into safety and proper use, etc. All right. So we see here, the first thing we are going to look at is knowledge. I'm going to give the 3 overall purposes of these reasons. Okay? Because we have these 4 reasons, and we are going to have a little activity later concerning this. Alright, so we are going to experience setting rules concerning these 4 purposes. And for right now, we are going to give the overall reason for rules. And we have rules are set for knowledge. Now, there are some times when we may not know how to use a certain item. Anybody has ever been in a situation before where you didn't know how to use something? Yes, right. And sometimes, like let's say it was a new cell phone with all these new features, right? Would you be able to use that cell phone without any instruction on how to use it? Maybe we may get through the basics, yes? Maybe the basics, but would we know all the features and how to get into every area of the cell phone? No. So sometimes we have to follow certain rules regarding getting some knowledge concerning certain things, all right, which will help us to be able to use that item properly, which is another thing we learn in the Peaceful Solution. We learn that items are to be used for their intended purpose. Okay, so we want to remember that. That shows respect as well. All right, another reason is for safety. All right, like in this picture, I have somebody pointing to a little sign, and it says caution, wet floor. And we see some water on the floor. Have you ever walked somewhere, maybe in a building, and you saw those little yellow things on the ground and it says, you know, wet floor? Right, or slippery, yes? And are we very careless to walk onto the spot? No, we keep the rules and we make sure that we don't step there, or we may slip and fall and we may hurt ourselves. So we don't want to get hurt. And we also, if we're responsible for others, like parents being responsible for children, or supervisors being responsible for those in their care, they want to make sure that everyone keeps the rules so that they are kept safe from any injury or harm, any damage. Do we want to be responsible for others and keep them safe? Yes, we want to do that. So we have to remember that we must appreciate that rules are kept for safety. All right, safety purposes. Another thing is, overall purpose of rules, to help things run smoothly. Have you been, anybody, if you can give an example of any situation where by keeping a rule, something worked out very smoothly? Could anybody give us an example of that? Oh, we have an example right here.
Oh, I'm thinking of when I'm driving down the road, there's a traffic law, and if I fail to yield to the red sign or the go sign, I can cause an accident. So by following those rules, I'm able to go where I'm going and get there in safety and don't cause accidents on the road.
All right, so she's talking about, let's give her a hand, she's talking about making sure to keep those rules regarding the road, safety rules regarding traffic laws, so that we keep ourselves and we keep others safe. Anybody else has an example?
Well, I was thinking at home with your children. Your children are given certain chores or certain tasks to do to help either the dinner run smoothly or the cleaning of the house, so that not all the responsibility falls on one person, and yet everybody benefits from it because the laundry's done, the dishes are done, the floors are clean, because everybody is, you know, given a rule or a job to do.
Yes, that's right. She's talking about everybody, each person doing his or her part. And I can tell you from experience that works out beautifully when everybody is reliable and makes sure to do what they're supposed to do. Everything runs smoothly. And isn't it a better environment when things run smoothly, when everybody keeps the rules and they respect the rules and they respect themselves and they respect one another? That's the way the Peaceful Solution teaches us to be, all right? Because we're all learning about ownership regarding things, we're all learning about authority, and we're all learning how to deal with one another respectfully. You have an answer?
Yes, when you are at work, of course, assignments that you have, and everyone does their assignment, and it does run the program very well.
Yes, assignments. When we do our assignments, when we make sure to get assignments done, it does help everything to run smoothly. And even if you're in, let's say, a teaching position, or if you have something to get done regarding turning in something before a deadline, you know, the person in authority, that supervisor, is looking forward to you turning in that particular assignment, because it's going to help everything run smoothly, all right? Because somebody is depending on you, all right? And we want to be reliable and dependable. Now at this time, regarding these three things, remember we looked at knowledge, we looked at rules set for safety, and we looked at rules set overall for things to run smoothly. Now, let me show you an example of something that we may see every day, and we may not even think of it, or maybe we do, but you have probably seen things like these when you buy. Have you ever bought an appliance or something, and you've seen these? How many of us take the time to read these? Not many of us? Or maybe we just kind of look for the pieces where we think it's most important at the time to use it, to get it quickly working. Alright, so let me show you this one. This one is for a blender. Anybody's familiar with a blender here? Yes. Okay, so this one is a blender. And if you notice, it shows us parts and features inside. This is for knowledge. Remember we talked about knowledge? Helps us to learn about the parts of the blender. It also, if we turn the page, it tells us about how to assemble it. All of that is knowledge on how to assemble the blender, because if we don't know how to do it, then it's probably not going to work properly. Alright, if we don't get it done. It even gives us some hints, some blending techniques. It tells us about different things, and it tells us how to clean it. Alright, so we want to see how to clean it. Remember, if we own something, we want to take care of it. We value that. Would anybody like to buy a blender every single day? No, we don't want to waste money. Alright, so we want to make sure that we know how to clean it, how to take care of it, and it goes on to tell us certain things about other languages, etc. Alright, now this one is a manual for a gas water heater. Alright, so this one is a little more technical if you look at it. And you see those signs inside from the minute I open? What do you think those signs are for? Which one of those three things we looked at? Safety. Safety, yes, because this particular possession, this particular item is something that we want to be really careful when we use this, alright? Because there are different warning signs in here that tell us how to use the item and to be careful about certain things regarding this so that we don't hurt ourselves. And we usually have a page, a contents page, and then it gives us more warnings, and it even tells us how to assemble. So you see the same knowledge given here. Now, if you've ever had a gas water heater set up and you can get warm water, doesn't that make things run smoothly? Yes. It does. It does, especially on cold days, right? Especially on cold days. Alright, so we want to look at some items now. So we're approaching our activity. We want to look at some items. I'm going to give you an example of an item. And if you can give me one rule that we may set for safety, and then we'll go to proper use, appropriate time, and to show consideration. Is everybody ready? Yes. Alright. How about a bicycle? Like if you're a parent and you have bought a bicycle for your child, what is one rule that you may set for that bicycle for safety purposes? Alright, I have an answer here.
Well, one rule might be that in order to ride the bicycle, a safety helmet must also be worn with the bicycle.
Okay, wearing a safety helmet. Yes, the child should wear a safety helmet. I had an answer here as well.
I was going to say that they shouldn't ride the bike in the street.
No riding of the bike in the street. And I see your hand up here.
If it's a young child, you want to also make sure there's a training wheel on it so they don't get hurt.
Ah, how many of us are familiar with training wheels? Yes, make sure there's a pair of training wheels on there so the child doesn't get hurt if it's a very young child. Do you have an answer?
Put it away when they're done with it so that it's not left behind the car or where someone could trip on it.
Yes, to put away the bicycle so that it's not left in a spot or a place where somebody could get hurt.
For an older child, if they ride their bike at night, reflectors.
Reflectors. If somebody is riding the bike at night, if it's an older child, she said, yes, we want to make sure that we are seen at night. Alright, let's take some for proper use. What about some proper use?
Ride with both hands on the handlebars.
Ride with both hands on the handlebars, and we want to make sure. Now that's a great point, because sometimes, you know, when children want to be a little adventurous, and they one hand and they no hands and all that, and then they could fall down and get hurt. So we want to make sure that we set rules concerning these things.
I'm thinking about the proper use too. Sometimes I see children riding their bicycle. It came with 2 wheels, and they pull the front wheel upward, and they're riding on 1 wheel. They can hurt themselves and can even damage them.
Yes, that's right. Pulling the wheel up and just riding on 1 wheel, we want to make sure and set a rule concerning that so they don't get hurt. And we'll take one more.
1 person per bike. Unless it's a 2-seater.
1 person per bike unless it's a 2-seater. All right, what about appropriate time? What about appropriate time? Appropriate time to ride that bike. Let's have an answer here.
One would be only after the chores are done.
Only after the chores are done.
No riding in the main highways during rush hour.
No riding in main highways during rush hour.
Permission.
To get permission before riding the bike.
Not at night unless you have a headlight on your bike.
Yes, not riding at night unless you have a headlight on. Okay, otherwise somebody could get hurt, and not only the person riding the bike, but somebody else could get hurt as well, or even more than one person. All right, let's go to show consideration. What about some rules we can set to show consideration regarding that bike? We have an answer at the back here.
Following the rules of the road, if they are allowed to ride on the roads, that they're not cutting people off, and because they have to follow the same traffic laws that the cars do.
Yes, following those rules regarding the road so that they don't cut anybody else off and shows inconsideration, right? We're talking about consideration.
Don't try to use your bike as a weapon to like run people over or push somebody out of your way or something like that.
Yes, not using that bike as a weapon to push somebody out of the way. You had an answer? No? Okay, we have an answer to the front here.
I'm thinking not riding the bike in the midst of a crowd. If there's a crowd, you don't want to run over people with your bike.
Yes, no riding into crowds or you can run over somebody. Any answers here?
Making sure the brakes is working properly, so in case there's an emergency, the brakes is working.
Very interesting and important, the brakes. We want to make sure that the children have the brakes working properly, or they could get hurt, really badly hurt. And we'll take one more for consideration.
That there is more than one child has to use that bike, and showing consideration that you take turn and you have a time frame when you use it, maybe 60 minutes or after you take turn. Consideration for the other person that you take it all the time and ride it.
Yes, taking turns if you have to share that bike so that everybody gets a turn and everybody can enjoy riding that bike. Now, let's take one more as we're on this activity. What about a computer? What rule would we set regarding a computer for safety? For safety. Let's take the answer at the back.
Children should never be on the internet or the computer unsupervised.
Okay, children not on the computer, on the internet without supervision. All right, we want to make sure that their minds are kept safe.
One of the safety for the computer is making sure that you properly shut it down.
Making sure, yes, that's right. Making sure that we properly shut down the computer. You know, sometimes, you know, we may be tempted to just press and hold the button, right? Get it all black suddenly because we're in a rush. But we have to practice self-control. Remember we talked about self-control? Yes, we want to practice self-control and do things properly. All right, let's have one for proper use of this computer. Proper use. Proper use. We have an answer at the back.
Look at any inappropriate material on the computer.
Yes, that they would not look at any inappropriate material on the computer, and that's very important, okay? Because, you know, these things get to the mind, and then you have these things coming out in words and behaviors.
Not typing on the keyboard so hard when they're frustrated or angry, or hitting with the mouse just because they're upset because maybe your computer's working slow.
Yeah, sometimes the computer is a little bit slow. I see some heads shaking. Like, yes, it gets us frustrated at times, and we want to, you know, press a little harder or, something's wrong with the keys, but we just need to have some patience. Another thing that we learn in the peaceful solution.
Don't use your computer and have drinks around them.
Don't have drinks while we're using the computer. We don't want the drinks to fall. What about appropriate time to use it? Well, that would vary, right? Depending on the different families and depending on the child, the age of the child, how many children, etc. And to show consideration, somebody had mentioned about taking turns. All right, so we want to talk about taking turns, and we want to think about that when we're setting rules regarding. And let's get one concerning that, showing consideration.
It's used a lot nowadays for school children where they're even bullying each other on the computer. And they think that it's okay because they're not doing it face to face, so they're kind of anonymous. But we need to teach the children that it doesn't matter if they can see you or not, you still have to show care and concern for other people.
All right, so she's talking about cyberbullying. Anybody's familiar with that term? Yes? Yes, we are, and we need to make sure and set rules and make sure that we also practice those rules regarding showing consideration to others. Now, one very important thing before we come to the end of class, one thing we need to remember is that whilst we may set rules if we are in certain positions of authority for others to keep, we also should be keeping rules as well. Because remember, we want to show that same example. We want to be that example for those who have to keep the rules. And we want to show that same consideration. We want to be respectful. And one of the things that we need to remember regarding the keeping of rules, concerning rules are okay, is that sometimes we may not understand why a rule is set. We may not understand the rule in itself. We may be confused. We may be thinking, I don't get why we have to keep this rule. And whilst we may know about these 4 purposes, and we have looked at the 3 overall reasons, the thing is, we have to remember that the rule nevertheless is set for a specific purpose, for some reason. And if we are not sure, we can always ask for better understanding. All right, there's always somebody we can go to help us to better understand concerning that rule and the keeping of that rule. And one of the things we want to remember concerning rules are okay is that when we look towards that getting better understanding, we come back to the self-control unit, and it teaches us that we must have self-control regarding the words, the choice of words that we use when we're asking those questions regarding those rules. We also learn about the tone of voice that we use when we're asking about those rules, and our attitude and behavior should always be respectful. Another trait of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. So overall, in conclusion for the class today, we're looking at follow the rules regarding possessions. There are many benefits, and regarding these rules, it benefits us, the person who owns the item or the person who is supervising others, and it benefits those who may have to use the item as well, and those in general. And that's what the Peaceful Solution is all about. It's all about everybody getting along and things running smoothly. So overall, we have covered ownership, and I have one question for you. Are rules okay? Yeah. Yes, rules are okay. So I'd like everybody to give yourselves a big hand for doing such a great job this afternoon. We've come to the end of class.